And so we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Alexis Lankford. I use she, her pronouns. I will be your presenter for this session. Thank you so much for coming. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen for the presentation. And I do encourage you to use the chat function to send in different things. If you want to introduce yourself via the chat, feel free to do that. I would love for you for that to happen. And then at the end, if we have time to engage and chat more, we can use the Q&A. So here we go. Okay. So I do have this on Canva, which if you've never created a PowerPoint on Canva, it is a really cool thing to do. Just make sure you use all the things that are free. Otherwise you run into some other weird stuff. So, all right, so this is the leadership basics. We're gonna find your leadership style. We're gonna do several things during this presentation. So I hope you're excited. I do encourage you to take some sort of notes because there are pieces that you're going to want to potentially use later on in the session. So whether that's on a little Word document to the side or maybe on a piece of paper in front of your computer, whatever that means for you, I do recommend it. All right, so we're here. Our goal is to be able to help our team work smarter and not necessarily harder. And a lot of that can be done by your leadership as a leader. So once again, my name is Alexis. I use she, her pronouns. I did my undergraduate degree at Wichita State University in Kansas. So I am from out of state. I then, after graduation, I majored in secondary education with mathematics, which will play into a little bit of how I do things. And then I served a year as a collegiate development consultant for Delta Gamma fraternity. So I traveled internationally for the fraternity to consult chapters in their leadership styles and to help them develop as people. And now I am a second year in the college student personnel program for my master's degree. So graduating in May. And if you see me on campus, some of you, I think I've given similar presentations to before. So nice to see you again. But I am always here to serve as a reference. If you do have any follow-up questions, just let me know. Okay, so we're going to start with a leadership definition, and this is just from dictionary.com. They have it as a noun of the action of leading a group or people or an organization. So that is how they define leadership, but just because that's their definition does not mean it needs to be the exact definition for you. So when I think of leadership, I think of it more as that individual base. So really thinking about it, what does that leadership mean to you? So like I said, I think of it more as individualized because I think you can do a lot if you think of that way, if you think of it as an individual and not always about the group that you're leading. So how is that moving forward and helping you? But these are some other questions I want you to consider. So I'm going to read out the questions. I'll give you about like 10 seconds or so to think for yourself and come up with an opinion, and then I'll share with you my insight. So do you have to have certain qualities to be a leader? Are you born a leader, or can you become a leader at any point in your life? And how do you become a better leader? So I'll give you about 10 seconds or so to think about those three questions before I keep going. And if you do have any questions that pop up during the presentation, feel free to use that Q&A feature. I will try to keep track of that and answer those. I'll probably answer them at the end, to be honest with you, but yeah, send them in. Okay, so now I'm going to go through these questions, and keep in mind that like this is my personal experience and those things have influenced how I believe these things function, and you can make your own decision for yourself. That is okay. So do you have to have certain qualities to be a leader? I say no. I think there are some qualities that are going to be very beneficial to you in your leadership, but no matter what qualities you have, I think you can still leverage them to make yourself a good leader. So not necessarily, I guess, is the best response for me. And then are you born a leader, or can you become a leader at any point in your life? I believe that you can become a leader at any point in your life, and it's not necessarily that you're just born with, similar to the personality traits and whatnot. Some of those things you can work on and you can leverage, and how do you use that for your own benefit and for your team's benefit. So yes, you can become a leader at any point. And then how do you become a better leader? I think this is all about intentionality. So if you want to become a better leader, you have to show up and you have to try. So setting that intention of, I want to become a better leader, which all of you have clearly done because you're here today. So pat yourselves on the back. Great job. You're already trying to take that next step into becoming a better leader and learning more about it. And it's just setting that intention. So now assessing your strengths, and these are your skills. So like I kind of talked about, there's a lot of different personality traits or skills that will be beneficial in leadership. So things like active listening, your communication, honesty, integrity, confidence, some of those like values and skills will definitely come out as a leader and it can be extremely helpful, right? Like if you can't listen to your team, then how are you supposed to properly lead them? So things like that that you can still build into your leadership tool belt is definitely a great thing to do. But aside from those kind of personality traits and characteristics, there are also different styles of leadership. And some of these you may be familiar with already. Some of these may be brand new to you, but we're going to get going on them. Okay, so your leadership styles. So there's not a set, oh, I thought it might do that to me. It did it to me when I was practicing earlier today. So leadership styles. There are several types of leadership styles. We're going to go through 7 of them, but these is not a fully extensive list. I think it's a pretty well-rounded list that covers different types of traits and styles, but feel free to look further into different ones. And you can also use a multitude of these styles. I would say if you're beginning, then you might want to focus in one leadership style, but as you grow as a leader, you'll start to be able to change and adjust them based on the group that you're leading. So keep that in mind. We're going through autocratic, authoritative, pace setting, democratic, coaching, affiliative, and laissez-faire. So in coaching, I think I said that one. So we're going through these 7 right now. Okay, so autocratic. This is a do as I say. So generally this leader believes that they're the smartest person at the table and they're going to make all the decisions for their team with very little input. On kind of the very opposite of that, you have authoritative, and this is a follow me. So they're going to try to lead the way and map that way for their people that they're leading. And they're going to be very engaging, setting expectations, energizing followers along the way. So these are on very different spectrums of your leadership style, and some of you may naturally go towards one versus the other, and that's not a bad thing. So recognizing that there is a time that you maybe want to be more autocratic versus authoritative. So sometimes you just need to tell people this is what you need to do, and you'll find that in your leadership. But a lot of times it can be really beneficial to engage in those conversations and try to have them follow the way. So these are 2 options for you, but we got some more to look at. Okay, so next up is pace setting. This is a do as I do. But the one thing to really recognize with pace setting is that they are setting that pace fast and they're going hard to the finish line. So I am typically a pace setting leader, but I have to really watch myself because if I don't, I'll continue to set this pace that is unrealistic for my team. And it can cause a lot of burnout for your team if you're constantly saying, I need to be performing at this really high top level the entire time. So recognizing the realisticness of that and how you want to maybe tone that down a little bit or adjust based on your team. Like if you have another team member who is also very like high energy and ready to go and do those things, then yeah, set the pace and go hard. But if you know that your team is not going to function that way, then this may not be the best leadership style for them. So, and then on the other side, you have democratic, and democratic leaders are often asking, what do you think, and trying to get your input before any final decisions are made, similar to authoritative. So those 2 are very similar, but the big point with this one is they're asking for all of those opinions, which can be really helpful to increase buy-in and support morale within your team that you're working with or the people that you're leading. Just keeping in mind that sometimes that can take a lot of time. So I know one example I use for this is when you're making like a t-shirt design for a group that you have, depending on your size of the group. I say if it's a larger group, then you should come up with a few designs and then let them choose from that, or come up with a few parameters, because otherwise if you let every single opinion come through, that can become a really long process and you'll never actually get your t-shirt ordered. So those are the differences of sometimes when you want to use one versus the other. Okay, and then we have coaching. So coaching is a very like consider this style. They're going to be asking you as your leader to say like, have you thought about this approach, or what about this idea? Have you considered those things? So instead of telling you like this is what you need to do, they're going to bring it out for the very much like have you thought about this? And also recognizing how that is going to affect the people that you work with. This I think can be really helpful to like tap into that ability and help them achieve what they're capable of, but also recognizing you have to be very careful with like your wording and how you're framing these conversations, because not all of your followers really respond well to this type of consideration. I know like my spouse does not like it when I do this. And so that's something I had to learn, that I had to change some of those behaviors to better support him on my team. So excuse me. I've been trying to say this word all morning and I keep messing it up. So I'm so sorry about that. Affiliative. So this is a people come first. So this is a very people oriented, want to check on their emotional well-being. How can I support them as a team? And you're really trying to open that communication. And so I think this works really well if you have a smaller team. So maybe if you have a team of like under 5, this can be great because you're building really close connections and you can put their needs first. So I love that as a leadership style. And then laissez-faire. So this is the one that you're going to be doing the least amount as a leader. So you're very hands-off. You're letting the group maybe run how it needs to go. I know some advisors will have a little bit more of this approach because they know that they want you to take your own journey with this and kind of create your own plan. And so they will try to be more hands-off and laid back. But that is just an option. So also keeping in mind that some people will not respond well to this and they want and need more of your support. So recognizing when your teammates need certain things from you. But that's it. Those are the leadership styles. So I hope through those you took a few notes and you were able to kind of come up with, oh, this is the better leadership style for me, or recognizing when you maybe have used one leadership style versus the other. And keeping that in mind will really help you moving forward. Okay, and some of these may have sound very familiar. From my education background, these are actually very in line with parenting styles. And so some of these words you might have been like, oh, I think I've heard that before. Well, this is where it's from, if any of you are ed majors. So this was by Bob Rim, excuse me. And they created these styles in the 60s and they still held true today. So that authoritarian or disciplinarian, permissive or indulgent, uninvolved or authoritative. So those are a few of the styles that we kind of talked about earlier today. But just as a fun fact, that this is all built out of that type of research and then it's adjusted to kind of leadership style. Okay, so now that you know your leadership style, we're ready for the next step. So how do you use this leadership style with others? So if you remember when I was talking through those presentation styles, I was talking a lot about like, well, if you have this type of team member, this may not be the best approach for them. And that is an important thing to consider, because as much as you want to be a leader, you still have to lead others. So the other members of your team and what they have is going to be a really big impact to how this will work. So what we're going to do is you're going to take a leadership assessment. So I'm going to stop sharing for just a moment. And I'm going to send something in the chat. So I hope you all have now seen that. So follow that link. And we are going to go through this True Colors assessment together. I am going to talk you through it. So if for whatever reason you can't follow that link, don't worry. You will see it on my screen very soon. Whoop. Oh, it's not going to want me to do that. Okay. I already had it pulled up, so it's fine. Okay, so what you're going to do is we're going to take this first row. Okay, and you are going to read all of these adjectives and come up with which one is the most like you. And really try to trust your gut here. Which one is the most like you? So in box A, you have active, variety, sports, opportunity, spontaneous, flexible. In B, you have organized, planned, neat, parental, traditional, responsible. C is warm, helpful, friends, authentic, harmonious, compassionate. D is learning, science, quiet, versatile, incompetent. And so with those, you are going to describe 4, 3, 2, and 1. Which one is most like you, with 4 being the most like you. So for example, for me, I know that like column D is the least like me. That is the least likely for me. So if I can do this. Okay, so this would be my 1. And then I know that this one, the row A or column A, I suppose, that's going to be my 4. And then these two, I'm like, yeah, okay. I'm more likely a C than I am a B. So this is my 2. And that's what you're going to do all the way through this. Okay. So you are going to answer these all the way on each row, and then you're going to count them up. So I want you all to know that this is really hard because I can't see your faces, so I'm not sure where you're at in this process. But I'm going to give you just a minute or two to read through these and to write down your numbers. And then when you scroll to the bottom, okay, and then when you scroll to the bottom, it will have you tally up from the section header. So like you'll tally up your orange score, you'll add A, H, K, N, and S. So you'd add up all those numbers, and that's the number that would go here. So I'm going to give you a few minutes. I'm just going to keep it right here on my screen so that you can see this as well, to start filling this in on your own in case you weren't able to pull it up on your own document. So I'm going to give us about 1 minute or so, 1 or 2 minutes to get this part filled out. And if you haven't finished it at that point, it's okay. You can still do this throughout the rest of the session and finish that part up. But yes, about 1 minute or so to get this part done. Some of you may have already done the true colors assessment previously, and that's okay. I think it's always fun to redo it because depending where you got the test will actually sometimes vary where you go. And also as you change and grow as a person, that can also change how you're assessed. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so that's about 2 minutes to kind of work on that. So at the very bottom, you will come, well, actually, I'll show you, sorry. Okay, so at the very bottom, if you haven't added those up, you can take a little screenshot of my screen right now and add those up in case you weren't able to get it pulled together. And if you need this link again, I can send it to you, no worries there. But we are going to go back to the presentation and talk about these. So now you may know, oh, this is my color. And I know that document goes into more detail on them as you scroll. So you could look there, or we're going to talk about it. So don't worry. Okay, so the true colors assessment, a little bit about it. Whose idea was it? It was developed by Don Laurie, and it was used as a metaphor for understanding human characteristics. Why could this be helpful? It helps us understand the ways people and their behaviors and values are different. So we know that some people are going to behave differently intrinsically. So them as their self, as a person, will behave in a different manner. And once we're aware of these differences, we can work more effectively across our difference. So it's okay to be different, and we can celebrate that because those strengths can make our team better. But we need to recognize that and be able to use those to become better. So kind of some outcomes with this. I want you to better understand where you are. And then if your team hasn't taken true colors, recommend that they take it. It's free. Why not? So understanding yourself and others, and then being able to identify and the different motivations, actions, and communication approaches related to each color or temperament. So like I was talking about earlier, you can adjust some of your leadership style based on your team, which makes you a better leader. Okay, so true colors, they come down to 4 colors: green, orange, gold, in blue. Sorry, my screen wanted to run away for a second. So green, those are your analytical, intuitive, more visionary people. Orange, those are your energetic, spontaneous, charming. Gold is loyal, dependable, prepared, organized, caring. And blue is empathetic, compassionate, cooperative. So I know for me, I go back and forth between orange and blue. When I was younger and through like undergrad, I was definitely more of a blue, but I think now I've become more of an orange. So that is how I've developed, and everyone's a little different. So I know some people who started more blue and have slowly gone more gold. Some people, I feel like if you're a green, you probably have stayed a green, but you can adjust, that changes. But we're going to go a little bit more in detail to each of these. Okay, so green. So these are some of the work traits. No, it tried to run away. There we go. These are some of the work traits for green. So they expect intelligence and competence. They assume task relevancy. So this is the analytical brain. So that's what you kind of keep in mind. So like I said, analytical, they are all about improvement. So they encourage that, but they believe everything is still in process because of some of these things. And they expect people to follow through. So on their bad days, they may be indecisive, extreme aloofness or withdrawal. Could have some put down remarks or sarcasm, refusal to communicate, or the silent treatment, perfectionism due to severe performance anxiety. So those are things to recognize, and highly critical attitudes towards yourself and others. So these are some things to recognize about greens, and that may change how you then approach them. Okay, orange. Our work traits, so they expect a quick action. They're all about flexibility. They're very flexible people, very adaptable. They want to make things fun. They welcome change, and they're very performance oriented as well. Their bad days, they may be more rude or defiant, breaking rules intentionally, or running away, or stopping in the process, or lying, cheating, physically aggressive. Those can sometimes be things for oranges. So keeping that in mind. Yes, these are base characteristics. Not to say that these are always going to be the characteristics that you will find in these personality types, but these are just ones to kind of keep in mind. Okay, so gold, it expects, is it going to come back? No, it didn't. Okay, sorry about that. So gold expects punctuality, order, loyalty, assumes there's a right way to do things in a kind of a fair way. They don't really question tradition as much, but they're very detailed and thorough. So keeping that in mind. And they expect people to play their role. So it's if they have this part of the team, they expect other people to play their role of the team. So some of their bad days could be more anxiety or worry, complaining or self-pity, some herd mentality, or blindly following leaders. That can sometimes happen because they don't want to challenge that tradition aspect. So keeping that in mind, especially if you're working in a longer standing group, if you have a lot of goals, that can be a piece that you really have to work with. And blue. So they expect people to express their views. They want to develop other people's potential. These are really like people-oriented people. Encourages change with human potential and expects people to develop their potential. So they're very democratic. So like we talked about leadership styles, this is someone who wants to get everyone's feedback and really bring it together. Their bad days can be attention getting misbehavior or withdrawal, fantasizing or daydreaming, passive resistance, some other of these kind of negative traits that can come out. So just keeping that in mind and thinking, how can I best work with my team based on who they are and what color they have associated with them. Okay. So now that is all the piece on our true colors and those types of styles. So now as extra pieces to kind of add into your leadership tool belt and understanding of yourself as a leader, I want to talk a little bit about inclusive leadership characteristics. So a psychologist, Edwin Hollander writes, inclusive leadership is about relationships that can accomplish things for mutual benefit. Reaching leadership at this next level means doing things with people rather than to people. So thinking about leadership, this is very like team oriented, and you're, even if it's not as a team, you're still working with those people, and not just things you're doing to people as like a reaction. So very people centered in there because they matter. Okay, so here's a few pieces to this inclusive leadership. So practice self-awareness, building relationships, living a shared vision, and creating change. So practicing self-awareness. So this is being aware of yourself and your actions and your previous actions. And when you know those behaviors and patterns, it can help you adapt with new challenges and maybe even adapt for the better. So it's okay to not know everything under the sun right now, right? Like no one expects that of you. But recognizing how those patterns repeat can help you stop those patterns if they're problematic or bad, or help encourage them, or maybe have them happen more often if they're positive ones. So practicing that self-awareness will only make you a better leader. So constantly check yourself and evaluate what is happening, when did that happen, and why did that happen, what identities and characteristics have played into my understanding of this, to then be more aware for next time. So in building relationships, creating that safe working environment is extremely important. People want to be accepted, and so they should be accepted in your team and area, and not be labeled. So building those strong relationships. One way to help with that is living a shared vision. So this is really linking into that big vision overall. So thinking about like BGSU, one of our kind of phrases is we're a public school for a public good. So that can be our shared vision that we're all going in for. We said, yes, you're right. So they're going to give us this service because it's for a public good, and we're going to go out and do good into the world. So recognizing those pieces and knowing if you have a team, what is your shared vision? Do you have one right now? I don't know. So having that as a guiding light to continue you in your progress with your team will be really helpful. And then creating change, so creating conditions for change that allow co-building strategies and implementation, and also finding those resources necessary. So being open for feedback and allowing those conversations to take place so you then can make the appropriate change, and asking the people like, what type of change should we have? What does this need to look like? Then doing that research. So always being okay with change, because even though it's scary, it can be really good. Okay. And now, oh, it wanted to keep doing this to me. Okay, the little things do matter. So this is about micro communication. So the small behaviors that make us feel excluded or ignored at times. These are tasks of the inclusive leader to make sure that they don't appear on your team. Now, there are some of these that are more positive, and then there's some that are more negative. So recognizing that there's a time and a place. So sometimes these positive ones you may want to use on your team and add in more so. So starting with the micro inequities, so these are subtle, often unconscious messages that devalue, discourage, and impair workplace performance. And workplace performance, team performance, people performance, now all of that. No one likes these. So they're conveyed through facial expressions, gestures, tone of voice, choice of words, nuance, syntax, some things like that. So then you have micro affirmations. So these are subtle, apparently small acknowledgments of a person's values and accomplishments. They lead to a greater self-esteem and improved performance. So giving those like head nods during presentations, I know you can't do that right now because I can't see any of you, but maybe in class next week, you can give micro affirmations to your professor by nodding along when you agree, giving good eye contact, giving those like thumbs up here and there. Those are like small things that can be micro affirmations, excuse me. And then micro advantages. So once again, these are subtle, often unconscious messages that motivate, inspire, and enhance workplace performance. So similar to the micro inequities, they are conveyed through your facial expressions, gestures, etc. So smiling at people as they do presentations, or giving them that like physical like feedback, even if we're across screens or even if you're in person. What does that mean? So looking at these and knowing that what you're doing and how you respond will always matter. And even if it's not something that you intended, that impact is still there. So recognizing that if you're constantly like making jokes during one of your like leaders' presentations or doing something like that, that can a lot of times be a micro inequity, and that's not going to help them feel more confident in their role and responsibilities. So recognizing how are you affirming or not affirming your team members and the people that you're leading. Okay. So now to end this part, well, not really the end. We're going to open it up for Q&A at the end of this presentation, since I think I will have some time. But we're going to start talking about leadership experience to your resume. Ooh, so the good stuff. Okay, so your first step is to reflect on your leadership experiences. So when you're doing this, I want you to write down all of your leadership titles and positions that you've had. So for some of you, you may have a longer list compared to others, but write it all down. So for me, if I'm talking about my current life, I would talk about I am the assistant to the chair for the college for the college student personnel program. So that would be one title. My next one I would write down is I advise for Delta Gamma fraternity. I still do that, so I wrote that down. And then my next one is I'm on the student contact board, so student contact board member. So I'm writing down all my position titles. And for you all, it could be your volunteering, so where you volunteer. It could be your different leadership titles. One question I've gotten is, what happens if I don't have a leadership title? That's okay. What is the way, how would you summarize what that experience is? So if you're part of a group, put the group name. That's okay. It doesn't have to be, it can just be member of that group. You don't have to always have that leadership style, or excuse me, title to lead and to accurately describe your experience on your resume. So once you've written down all, I'm hoping that you're doing this right now. Otherwise, I'm just going to keep telling you to do it. So once you've written down all of your titles, write them on the little side piece of paper or whatnot, because we're going to work with those. Now I want you to write what you did for those. So this can help, and this might be something you're going to want to go back to later. So we're just going to start building the framework for you to then go in more depth at a later time. So I want you to look at your position description from those different positions, or remember what are events that you put on, or how can you contribute or help. So I remember in undergrad, I was of course a member of Delta Gamma, and I didn't get a position until I was like a junior. So, but I still wanted it to be on my resume, because I was like, you know what, I'm affiliated, I'm doing stuff in this leadership role, even though I don't have a title. I was like, I can still be doing stuff. So I talked about participating in different events, in philanthropy events, and then also I talked about supporting my fellow sisters and how I was helping them to engage with their like studies and things like that. So those were the things I would write down for this example. If you actually have a title and position, then write down the actual things you did. So like one of mine was I planned our formal one year. So it was organized. Now I'm putting in actual resume speak, but I planned it formal. So this is what I'd write down for right now, is writing down those pieces. So other things to consider that might help you come up with what was part of that experience is, what has been your major accomplishments in your student leader positions, or what are you most proud of? Those are great things to highlight, and you should, because that's a great talking point, especially if you're proud of them. What programs or events have you planned and implemented during your time as a student leader? So these can be a really like official or unofficial things. So say you had some meetings to talk about the current like life landscape, that could be a really good one. If you actually planned events, so like I talked about, I planned a formal once, that's a great one to put on there. Whatever this may be for you, big or small, go ahead and write it out. And then what is your typical role at meetings or other organizational events? So maybe you take notes for your meetings, maybe you record them, maybe you post the notes somewhere else. Maybe it's just a contributor. So you're there at a seat at the table and to have that conversation and to be that open feedback. So that's another piece of these. These are all areas that you can add to this experience. Okay, so I'm going to stop talking for a second and I'm going to let you keep writing, because I'm sure you still have a few to write down. Then we'll go into this next piece. Okay, so then identifying your overall identifying your overall skills. So begin by listing those responsibility, duties, and accomplishments you've identified earlier. Then determine the transferable skills that you've gained as a result of that experience. So, for example, I'll use the formal example. I planned formal. What were the skills that I gained from doing that experience? Well, I worked with outside partners and vendors. So, and then you can, another piece of this is you can numerize that. So how many? I worked with 4. Yeah, I'm gonna say 4. I worked with 4 outside vendors for this event. Great collaboration showing that you could do that. What else? I worked within a budget of, I don't remember how much. I worked within a certain budget to plan a successful event. So that shows great budgetary skills for you that you can analyze and you can stay on budget within tasks. I coordinated, I guess as part of like collaboration, but like coordinated travel for 200 people. So like that's another piece that I could add in. So those are different skills that I was able to gain from that one type of experience. So if your experience was being a, like, okay, let's say you're a secretary for your student organization. One of your skills from that could be your written communication skills, or talking about like Robert's rules, and were you able to follow those? Did you hold them accountable to that? And those can be really good skills to pull from that. So some of your like written skills, sometimes reading skills can be really good, analytical skills, critical thinking, all of those are, I think of those buzzwords. They're all really popular and great to have on your resume. So you're determining all of those skills. So this is a multi-step part for each of your leadership positions. So depending on how many you've been involved in at this point will depend how long you need to spend on this step. Okay, but I think I've given you enough time to think through all of these. All right, so now let's do some examples. I know I talked through a lot of examples, but we're going to talk about it one more time. All right, so you take your responsibility, duty, or accomplishment. So there's where provide campus tours for prospective students and families. Yes, I did that. I did that as a tour guide. I hope some of you are tour guides. If not, you should apply because it's a great opportunity. Just shameless plug. And so then what are the transferable skills? Public speaking, customer service, interpersonal skills. Those are great. So you're looking for these like one word. If you want, you can go ahead and start putting in those full sentences. That's what you put on your resume. But you can start with these one words because that will really help you. And what you should do is have a long document that has all of this listed out. So that way, whenever you want to customize your resume or update it, you remember like, oh yeah, I have this transferable skill from that time when I was a tour guide. The second example, coordinate with a team of 8 residents, advisors, staff members to plan and implement weekly residence hall programming. So this is great if any of you are RAs or work with learning communities potentially. This could be something for you. So teamwork, organization, leadership. I would even put programming on here, or advertising. Some marketing maybe could have gone into that. So depending on your experience will depend on what transferable skill you get, but recognize that as a leader, you are building a lot of transferable skills, and it is your responsibility to stay on top of those so you don't lose them in your resume, and so people can understand that these are here. All right, so now actually crafting your resume. So you're thinking about this in 3 different pieces. So first, think about the qualifications. So you're going to read that position description, and this can be when you're applying for internships or different leadership positions. I know it's election season for a lot of your student orgs, so keeping that in mind. And you're looking at the qualifications. So typically it says like this position holder will have like high interpersonal skills and communicative. They may need to be like a leader in these aspects. You're looking for what are those exact words. So when reading the position description, I want you to highlight the areas that you are interested in and the areas that you already have skills. If you want to be very like visual with this, which is sometimes what I will do, is you can highlight them in 2 different colors. One highlight color is things that you're interested in within that position description, and the other color are things that you already have the skills or the like credibility to be able to do. Okay, so then you go through all of that description, highlight it how you please, but you want to recognize that because that should be at the forefront of your mind as you're applying. So then prioritize your content. You may not be able to fit all of your experiences onto this 1-page resume, which is typically what they recommend for undergraduate students, depending. Now, if you have like enough really robust experience to make it to be 2 pages, then I think there can be an argument for that. But I would say most people are recommending a 1-page resume for all of you. And so knowing some things are going to be more important than others. So when I applied at, back in the day, I used to work at Buffalo Wild Wings. And so I remember when I applied, I put all my customer service things on my resume up first. So I said, yeah, I worked at New Balance shoe store. I was a sales rep there. I worked at this other like sales place. I worked at a restaurant here before. And so even though some of those experiences were a little bit more spread out, I wanted them to know that I had seen similar things that would then connect to the qualifications they're looking for that job. So that helps you prioritize what content you want to put there. And I recognize that some of you are like, I don't have enough content. I'm not going to change it up. Hey, that's okay. But sometimes you then are changing your action points to more clearly reflect the qualifications. So then the proof of accomplishment. So it's important to back up your skills with specific examples. And this is where we'll provide qualifiers in those bullet points. So like I was saying, if say you only have the same like 4 options to put on your resume, that's okay. It will eventually grow and that's all right, except where you are now. But then for each of those bullet points, you can adjust them to better speak towards the qualifications that position is looking for. So these are ways to really like leverage that space and move things around. Okay, we're almost done, and then I will stop sharing and we'll have an opportunity to chat. Okay, so a few reminders for you. Productivity is never an accident. It is always the result of a commitment to excellence, intelligent planning, and focused effort. So I think this is a very true, that if you want to become a better leader, if you want to improve in yourself, you have to be intentional. You have to focus in on it and make that a point, which we talked about is why you're all here. So glad to have you. But the work does not stop. So the work does continue. I would love for you to send me questions. My email, athusto@bgsu.edu. You can send any questions to me. I'm happy to go through those with you and chat from my experiences. But otherwise, that is all I have for all of you today. So the Q&A function is open and available. So if you have any questions, you can send them in there. You can also send them in the chat for us to talk that way. I know we have about 8 minutes left within this section. So I will be here to answer any of your questions if you have any about the presentation or about other things. But if not, I know that online all-day conferences can be a lot. So if you want to take these last few minutes as a break for yourself, that's also okay. So do what's best for you, but I'm here to answer your questions if you have any. Ooh, I think we got one. Oh, yes. Someone asked for my email, didn't get to write it down. I think that went out in the Q&A, so I'm glad you liked the session. Thank you. Oh, yay. Thank you all. This is my first time presenting in this format. And so I was a little nervous about what was it going to be like just looking at Stacy's profile picture, but I'm glad you all thought it went well. It was a lot of fun.
I just wanted to jump in really quickly. I did see a question in the chat that says, could you share your presentation with us? I want to let you know that we will be uploading all of the sessions today are going to be recorded. And so we will be uploading the recording of all of these sessions onto the Marvin Center for Student Leadership's YouTube page. And we'll make sure you get a link to that YouTube page. So look out for that.
Well, perfect. Well, you all will have access to it that way. And then just because we have a few minutes, feel free. Does anyone want to share one thing that they learned from today? I mean, I know the things you should have learned, but would anyone like to share maybe something that was impactful from them for this presentation? You can share this in the chat,